And here we have it. So um, our program overview, we look at saying, what do we do? What is the difference between an associate degree and a bachelor's degree? As a bachelor's degree nurse, you're prepared as a professional nurse, and you're able to hold multiple roles. You are expected to be able to adapt, to function, and to thrive in a complex environment that is ever changing. Our patients of today are becoming iller, becoming more ill. That's really a good word. They're becoming sicker and sicker that we're caring for. And so you have to be able to engage with those patients and co-create their plan of care for health in collaboration with the healthcare team. You need to be able to engage in your learning. We're not going to come and say, here, you need to know these 3 sentences from your textbook. You're going to have to know these 4 sentences. You're going to have to be able to engage and be effective at guiding your learning based on what you know about yourself as a learner. You're going to be able to apply what you're learning in the classroom setting into your clinical experiences. And we start our clinical experiences week 1 of the program. So it's going to be more than just a job. And when you look at nursing and employment trends regionally and nationally, Colorado is going to be predicted to have a shortage of nursing of 20,000 by the year 2025. We're second only to Arizona, which will have a shortage of 49,000 nurses in that same time period. So employment trends are great. But you need to consider, why am I going into nursing, and do I want it just because it's a good job? Because there are things you have to deal with that can make it difficult if you just want a job. You have to deal with people not being happy, people seeking out assistance when they're not at their best, people who may die. You have to deal with people who maybe can't control all of their bodily functions, and you have to be able to provide compassionate care for them when they're at their worst. So the profession is amazing, and you can do so much with it. And one thing that we encourage our graduates to do is engage in new graduate residency programs after they graduate. Many of our graduates participate in residency programs. I was just over at Children's Hospital of Colorado, and over the past year, in their residency program, where they had 114 residents, 24 of those were from the University of Colorado College of Nursing. And when you look at that program, it's structured to help make you a better nurse during your first year. It's there to provide you with the resources and the support system and the learning as you go forward. Hang on, somebody's chatting. How long is the residency program? The residency program is typically 1 year of structured experiences, then with a second year of commitment to that agency, whether you're at Children's, whether at University of Colorado Hospital, whether you're at Vanderbilt, whether you're at any accredited residency program, it will typically be 2 years. We also encourage our graduates to look at non-acute care settings, because as we know, healthcare in this country is moving away from the acute care setting. And what I mean by saying acute care setting is hospital-based care. We're transitioning away from that hospital-based care into primary care models where people are taken care of on the outpatient basis. So your ability to be employed in a non-acute care setting is just as good as it is to be employed in an acute care setting. So we're going to provide you with the experiences clinically to be successful as a generalist entering into the profession. We're not going to make you a specialized nurse from this program. We're not going to train you as a family nurse practitioner. We're going to train you as a baccalaureate prepared generalist nurse who, when you graduate, you will be sought after because of the fact that you have your bachelor's degree in nursing. There are limitless opportunities to find your place, your home, and your experience within nursing. And so you need to think about, why am I pursuing this, and what opportunities do I want to seek out as I look to gain experience within the profession of nursing? Because I don't have to just work in the hospital. I can work in an outpatient clinic. I can do home health. I can work in a critical access clinic. I can work on a reservation where I'm the only healthcare provider for 200 miles. So the opportunities for you to gain the experience as a nursing student are phenomenal. I have a question right now. It says, what if about the student if they have experience of healthcare already? That's great. However, we're going to give you nursing clinical experience. So it is just a different type of approach. We're going to train you as a nurse, and we're going to help you grow and develop as a nursing student into that nursing professional. I have another question wondering if it's possible to transfer directly into a specialty nursing program after getting the BS degree in nursing. I need a little clarification in there, so if you can type me back your question and I'll go on to our next slide. So what do you need to know about the culture of learning here at the University of Colorado is that we're going to expect you to be inquisitive. Nursing is always thinking about the possibilities or what if with your patient. You're always looking to anticipate the next steps. You're not saying, okay, here's the status quo, because remember, with every breath, our human body changes. And so with every breath, with every beat of the heart, the patient's condition changes. And so we're going to expect you to be inquisitive and wanting to be engaged in your learning. We're not going to say, okay, memorize this information, but rather we're going to ask you to learn and learn topics in the manner that works the best for you. We also do a lot of innovation in our classroom setting. We use what's called a flipped classroom, so it's going to be an interactive classroom. So you may be learning about disease processes from your classmates in what we do in our pathophysiology course. You may be teaching peers about a certain condition. But we know that from studies that look at student learning and any human learning, the ability to teach someone demonstrates that you have mastery of their knowledge. So we really encourage you to be engaged. We're going to do a lot of team-based learning, and we're going to hold you to professional standards in the classroom and the clinical experiences because you are representing nursing as a profession. Just a heads up, we will be recording this and posting it on our website for you. We also expect our students to communicate professionally to the faculty, to their peers, and to our external partners. You don't start an email to your doctorally prepared faculty that says, hey ladies. You start it off with respect because that demonstrates a respect for the profession and a respect for the earned degree. It also is important to demonstrate respect for your peers because each one of you in the classroom brings unique experiences and unique aspects of learning that can help inform others in the classroom. We really do stress that our presentation to our external partners is critical because they judge sometimes by appearances. So that if our students don't communicate well, they'll say, wow, we don't want that group of students in our agency providing care for our patients. So we expect professional communication amongst yourself, amongst your peers, and with our external faculty, external partners. We also expect a high level of collaboration, that we're going to ask you to do group work because healthcare is no longer an individual practice. Healthcare is based on teamwork, and you get the best outcomes when you have an effective team together. So we want you to remember that you're going to have to collaborate with your peers, with your faculty, and with external partners because we know that patient outcomes are better when we have that collaboration. So how do I know if I'm ready? Well, financially, you have to have a commitment to learning on a full-time basis. So this means that you will be asked to be available 7 days a week, sometimes 52 days, 52 weeks of the year for clinical experiences. Your class times will be very scheduled and predictable. Your clinical times, now that can be another story. So because we might have clinical Monday through Friday. Oh, it might be on a night. And guess what? It might include Saturday and Sundays. So for example, in your first clinical experience, starting your second week of class, you will be in the acute care setting on a night or a weekend to start. So we're trying to expose you to what you're going to expect and experience in that agency as a new graduate nurse. We do not suggest that you work throughout this program because it is a full-time program of study. And you have to be able to say, if I have 2 3-credit courses, that means I have 6 credits. So I'm expected to study 3 hours for every 1 credit. So that means 6 times 3 is 18 hours a week that I need to be put into my studying. And then if I have clinical experiences on top of that that are 12-hour shifts, wow, already I'm at 30 hours a week just for school and not even thinking how am I going to try to balance working. So we don't suggest that you work, but we recognize that sometimes you have to make choices. So our schedule is very prescribed. Our schedule can change due to external factors. For example, we just had a clinical instructor that we had contracted with become ill, and that individual can't take a clinical group. So we had to change and reschedule that clinical experience for our students so that they could meet their learning outcomes from the course on a very last-minute basis. That doesn't mean it happens all the time. It means it can happen. And we recognize too that sometimes your personal schedules need to change. So if you need to plan out childcare, have a plan A, B, C, and D, because sometimes you're waiting on your childcare provider and they don't show up. Then what's your next step, especially when you have to be at the clinical agency in a half an hour? So we recognize that those changes happen, but we try to help you think about being proactive with that. We also know that people get sick and people get injured, but we ask that you take care of yourself first as an individual before you take care of yourself as a nursing student. So we really work with students. If they are ill, we try to work with them and figure out the best options for completing the requirements for the courses. And again, to say to a faculty member, sorry, I won't attend your class because I have to work, doesn't come off too well. And your priority when you're in a nursing program should be to your class, should be to your schooling and your training. So we expect that you're able to adapt, that you have several options available to you. Let your manager know, let your supervisor know that you're going to nursing school and these are my schedules that I have right now, and be transparent with them on the front end. And a lot of times they're willing to help you make some changes if your school schedule changes. And we also recognize that life events happen. You know, we work with our students on an individual basis because once they're admitted to our program, they're a part of our family and we're committed to helping them be successful in the program. So is this the right time for me as I'm thinking about applying? So we have some technical standards because nursing is a demanding profession physically and mentally and emotionally. We expect our nursing students to be able to work 12-hour shifts that sometimes stretch to 13 hours as they're learning. You're going to be in a complex environment where it's going to have all sorts of technology present that is going to help you understand what's going on with the patient. You're going to have to think on your feet quickly and critically and be able to apply the new learning that maybe you picked up last night as you were studying about your patient, but you're going to have the opportunity to apply that to your patient care that next day. So we expect you to be able to be ready and be able to meet our technical standards, and those are available on the website. And one thing I alluded to a little bit before is that when we care for individuals who are sick, many times they're not in the happiest place. And they may not be the most pleasant to deal with because they're sick. Think about it, how you feel when you're ill. What does that feel like when somebody says, oh, I need you to do this, and we need to do this, and we need to have this medication now? Sometimes you just want to go to sleep. And recognize that if that's how you feel, think about our patients when they're in an unfamiliar environment, when they're feeling vulnerable. You have to be able to rise above some of that emotion and say, I'm going to care for them and I'm going to co-create their plan of care with them and their care team. And so it's amazing how beautiful that can be when you work together with your patient to make a difference for them. So we do have a highly respected program. We continue to receive national recognition. We have outstanding academic leadership. We have outstanding faculty who are recognized nationally and internationally for their expertise. Our campus was built with an interprofessional education model in mind, in that we're in education buildings. We're not in, the College of Nursing building. We're in education too. And you'll see students from medicine, dentistry, pharmacy, physical therapy, public health, all having classes in the same buildings. And our campus was designed with an education zone, a research zone, and a practice zone. And our practice zone includes the University of Colorado Health Hospital, Children's Hospital of Colorado, and soon in the summer, the VA hospital will be relocated out here permanently. On the campus, there are a bunch of resources available to you, whether it's using resources from the Health Sciences Library, whether it's using resources from the Writing Center, the Phoenix Center, from our Student Affairs, from any of our groups here on the campus, that you as a student at the University of Colorado College of Nursing have access to them. So, what does this mean about me with my background? I need to have a strong science background. I need to be able to communicate well verbally as well as written work. But you might say, well, what do I have to write? We have to write well in our charting. We have to write well in our communication to other care providers. We have to be able to communicate effectively with our written work so that people can transition care from one nurse to another nurse. Some of your courses will be online, and so you have to be able to be prepared to be successful in an online learning environment where you might contribute to a discussion on Monday and Tuesday and then have to wait for your classmates to contribute on Wednesday and Thursday, and then you come back and do a discussion collaboratively on Friday and Saturday, and your final day for that discussion and your summary is due on Sunday. So you have to be able to facilitate your learning online as well as in a face-to-face setting. I've already alluded to the group work that we do expect of our students in the classroom. There's going to be a lot of technology for you as you navigate the nursing field and as you look to say, what resources can I utilize to maximize patient outcomes? Our clinical experiences are both on campus and off campus. In our on-campus Clinical Education Center, or CEC as you see here, we use simulation of high fidelity and low fidelity. We use case studies and we use care models that roll out. We have an electronic health record and a simulation learning system that our students use to help facilitate their learning and their preparation for their clinical education experiences as well as for their simulation experiences. For our off-campus experiences, we go through a variety of settings, whether that's at the school system, at Children's Hospital of Colorado, at the University of Colorado Health, at Porter Hospital, at Parker, at Skyridge, at Swedish, at St. Anthony's. We're in a variety of locations across the Denver metro area as well as in the Front Range of Colorado. So our curriculum is based with quality, safety, and education at the forefront. We incorporate evidence-based practice, and we expect you to be able to thrive in a complex care environment. One thing you do need to know is that not a lot of clinical experiences, and I apologize for this slide, it says no clinical at Children's Hospital of Colorado, which is a mistake. Not a lot of clinical experiences at Children's Hospital of Colorado. They want to see individuals who are well prepared and well-rounded who come to them for employment. So let me have Amy step in here and talk about the admissions requirement from traditional pathways.
Good afternoon. Sorry for the technical problems I was having earlier. This is Amy Sturrock, and I work in the Office of Admissions and Student Affairs. And we will definitely take your questions as they're coming, so keep chatting. And I just wanted to talk for a little bit about our traditional pathway as well as our accelerated pathway. So we'll just go ahead and jump right in with the traditional pathway. And this is a program that is 24 months. And it's designed for students who may or may not have a previous bachelor's degree. And the one thing to think about, depending upon your academic history, is that academic history is going to dictate how many courses you need to qualify to be eligible for one of our programs. So for instance, with the traditional pathway, if you have a previous degree, you just need those 5 prerequisites as listed. So the human anatomy, the human physiology, the microbiology, that chemistry, and also statistics. If this is going to be your first bachelor's degree, there is a full list of 16 specific courses that you need, and it incorporates within a total of 60 academic credits. And one thing you want to be thinking about is those courses or your previous degree must be completed at a regionally accredited institution. So pay close attention to the accreditation your school has. And in terms of the 60 credits, why we need that, we need you to have junior status in order to enroll in our program for academic reasons as well as financial aid reasons. And in terms of the timeline, the courses must be done within 10 years of the application deadline. And for the traditional pathway, I want to point out that you could potentially have some courses in progress during the application, and we'll talk about the application timeline in a little bit, but you could have some courses pending, but we definitely recommend having as many courses done as you can when you apply, or maybe be taking final courses in the fall term during the application, because that gives us the best sense of applicants, and we really want to be able to see how you're doing in courses during that applicant cycle. So I'll provide a little bit more details about the timeline for application in a moment, but our website does clearly outline the type and number of credits that may be pending during the application process, so that you have a sense of if you're eligible or not to apply. And I think I mentioned this is a 2-year program, and it starts every summer. And so we offer the traditional pathway at the Anschutz Medical Campus, as well as at our South Denver location in Parker. And when students apply for the traditional pathway, we ask them to indicate a learning preference, a learning location preference. So you would choose the Anschutz Medical Campus or the South Denver location. And just note that we cannot guarantee preference. We try to place students where you want to learn, but if we have a spot, we will offer you the spot and let you know where we have a learning location for you. In terms of, do you want me to answer questions as we're going? Sure. So we've got, let me just answer a couple of questions that have come up. And it looks like, okay, so somebody asked, I'll get the high fidelity. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer any of the academic prerequisite questions, and then I'll hand it over to Dr. Gordon to answer any other questions of a programmatic nature. But somebody asked about the South Denver location. Yes, it is down. We partner with the Wildlife Experience, which is off Lincoln and 25 down in Parker. That's exactly where we are. And we admit a cohort of 48 students down there each summer. So we start the program in June. The next question was about UCAN with the prerequisites. We do accept online courses. So the question was, can the courses be done online? We strongly recommend labs for the UCAN prerequisites. We don't require them. So, it's up to you. If you can take online courses with in-person labs, that's great. Again, just make sure that the courses you're taking are through a regionally accredited program and the content matches our expectations for the courses. And if you have any doubts as to whether a course might meet our requirements, you can always email me or my colleague Anna Pinthielen just to double check. We'd always rather you be conservative and ask than assume and then something not work out and there's disappointment on the back end. So let me keep going here with the next question. Does a 10-year expiration apply to the previous bachelor's degree? There's no expiration timeline for the previous degree. Okay, it's just the expiration timeline for the actual prerequisites for the program. The next question was about if you're placed on a campus that was not your preference, Are there opportunities to switch? So we've just admitted our traditional pathway cohort for 2018 this past week. And if students really reach out to say, gosh, I live close to Anschutz, I really want to be there, let's say they're placed at South, I basically can, have a kind of a list of students that are really asking to switch, but there's no guarantee that we could switch you. That would mean students that were admitted to the Anschutz location would have to drop the program. And I'm not saying that never happens, it's just there's not a guarantee that we could switch students. So if you are applying for traditional and you get placed at South, I would definitely say keep an open mind. It is a great location, and we will do some tours for the students. If the student is asking, they were just admitted possibly, we will offer tours this spring at the South Denver location, because I know that when you came to interview day, you weren't able to see South Denver. So I would just say keep an open mind. The reality is, though, when we start the program in June, the location where you are is a location where you are. So that is where you would do your learning for the next 2 years, if that makes sense. Man, there's a lot of questions already. Okay, keeping going. How many are accepted? So the traditional pathway, we currently have about 130 spots that we admit each summer. And what you want to do is keep in mind that our cohort as a whole is closer to a total of 200. And as I mentioned, 48 of those students are placed at the South location. The rest of the students, so you can kind of do that math in your head to say, well, 130, minus the 48 certainly that's not 200. We also partner with 3 local community colleges as part of our integrated nursing pathway, and we get up to 60 students a year through that pathway. So what we do is the IMP students come in and join the students that we admit that apply directly to the traditional pathway. And we're not talking about the integrated nursing pathway as part of this presentation, but please take a look on our website. If you do not have a previous bachelor's degree, that might be a good fit for you. The application is open right now for the next year of the IMP program. And always feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to have a conversation offline about that program. So I think at this point, I'm going to stop with answering questions and kind of just make sure I get back to the presentation. We'll come back to the questions, though, before we finish the session. So I think I left off with the GPA requirements. And for both our traditional pathway as well as our accelerated pathway, we are going to require a minimum 3.0 prerequisite GPA. And, I would say typically the average student that we admit typically has higher than a 3.0, but we are very inclusive in our approach to the application, and we know that there is definitely more to a student than grades. So we are very holistic in that we look at a number of other items, which we'll talk about when we advance to another slide. But we do require at least a 3.0 prerequisite GPA. And this is going to be based on the highest course attempts for those prerequisites that are on transcripts at the time of application, which is something important to remember. And in terms of the overall GPA or cumulative GPA, we strongly suggest a 3.0 as well, just because the application process is so competitive. And that cumulative GPA is based on all previous course attempts. So if, for example, your school had a grade forgiveness policy or a repeat delete policy, when you apply through Nursing Cast, which is our third-party application provider, every course you've ever taken is folded back into that overall GPA. So that's just something to be mindful of. And to give you a sense of numbers for the last applicant pool for the traditional pathway, we got approximately 550 applicants. And like I said, we just admitted about 130 students this past week. We do have a wait list, which is something I can mention now. There is a wait list that we will begin once we make decisions. So we admitted a certain number of students, we waitlisted a certain number of students, and then we also denied a group of students. And we never disclose the number of students on the wait list or where a student's position is on the wait list, but we do keep that wait list active in case we do have students that drop the program for whatever reason. Students may decide to go to another program. They decide not to move to Colorado. It's not the best time for them. There's a lot of reasons why students have a change of heart. And so because of that, we do keep a wait list. We do keep that wait list active until we begin the first week of classes. So I know some nursing programs carry a wait list from year to year. We don't do that. We keep it active during the cycle, and then once we begin, that wait list is dissolved so that the next application cycle that opens is fresh and everybody has an equal chance, if that makes sense. So with both our traditional and our accelerated pathways, we only admit once a year. And again, this traditional pathway is the summer start. Okay. So talking about shifting gears a little bit to the accelerated pathway, which we call UCAN, the University of Colorado Accelerated Nursing Program. This degree is a bit different in a few ways in terms of the pathway, in that students that apply for UCAN must already have a previous bachelor's degree or will earn that bachelor's degree prior to the start of the program. We start the UCAN program every spring, typically very early January. So if you're thinking about applying, then you would have to have your degree finished, let's say by the end of December, before beginning the UCAN program, if that makes sense. Due to the intensity of this program, it is 12 months. We do also require healthcare experience. And for the traditional pathway, let me back up a moment. We strongly recommend healthcare experience, but it's not an absolute requirement for traditional. Whereas for the accelerated program, it is a requirement, and it's something we look at carefully. And ideally, students have direct patient care experience. A lot of our students are trained and work as certified nurse aides. They might be EMTs, they might be medical assistants. You know, what we want is that really good sense of patient care, just so you understand the expectations and the environment. And also that, once you start the accelerated program, it is very intense. You're pushing 66 academic credits, which is typically a 2-year program. Like our traditional pathway is 66 credits over 2 years. The UCAN program is the same number of credits, but it's condensed into essentially 11 and a half months. So students start in early January and they finish mid to late December for that pathway. In terms of prerequisites, because all students must have a previous degree, there are only 5 prerequisites for the UCAN program. And again, they're listed the same as they were in the previous slide. Same applies for the expiration timeline, same GPA requirements apply. The one big difference though for UCAN is that all prerequisites, all 5 courses must be done by the application deadline, and grades must be on transcripts that we can see prior to the deadline for the UCAN program. Okay, so let's shift gears a moment and talk about the application process, and then we can get back to some of the questions that students are asking. So Nursing CAS is our centralized application service. It is, it's not required for students to apply directly to CU Anschutz. So Nursing CAS is linked from our website, and this is a system, it's a parent company is called Liaison. And if you're familiar at all with any other CAS systems like AMCAS or PTCAS, most of the major health programs have a CAS system. And Nursing CAS is essentially a third-party storing house for documents. And this is also the source where you send all your transcripts, and we access your records through our Nursing CAS portal. We always stress to apply early. Students often underestimate the time it takes to complete an application. And we never want to have an applicant not be eligible because they applied too late, or they weren't checking the status of the application, and then there was a problem in terms of them being eligible in time. Our timelines are very strict for our application. We cannot extend application timelines, and our traditional pathway program, as I mentioned, begins each June. And we have an application period in Nursing CAS of late August. I believe this year it's going to be August 21st. I haven't confirmed that 100%, but I believe it's going to open August 21st, and then the application will definitely close November 15th. So I typically recommend that students submit the application within the first month of the application period. And that way, if there is something that goes on, maybe a transcript is taking longer, or you're not sure of the status of some of your items, you have time to troubleshoot and hopefully get things in time. And Nursing CAS recommends that students submit at least 4 to 6 weeks ahead of time, because it takes time for them to process records. It's not just that you need to submit the application. Nursing CAS goes through an entire verification process of your records. And if any of you have not applied through Nursing CAS previously, one of the important steps you take as part of the application is to have your transcripts all sent and you need transcripts sent from every school you've attended. So even though you may have transferred community college credits to a university, for instance, that doesn't matter. We need each transcript from the original granting institution. So if you've attended 10 schools, you need to request 10 transcripts to be sent to Nursing Cast on your behalf. And you're not the middle person, so you don't collect the transcripts and submit them. You have to request that your school send official transcripts to Nursing Cast on your behalf. And that timeline alone is kind of difficult for students, especially if you've attended a lot of schools. Again, that's why we suggest starting the process early. In terms of the UCAN timeline, as I mentioned, the program begins each January, and the application opens March 1st, so that's next week, and it closes on June 15th. We do not require standardized entrance exams in terms of, like, say, for example, HESI or TEAS. But if we have some applicants that maybe English is not their primary language, then we may require a language proficiency exam to determine fluency, because communication skills are so critical for nursing. But otherwise, no standardized tests are required. There is a resume that is part of the application process. There are also 3 letters of reference required. And similar to the transcripts, you'll enter all of your coursework in Nursing Cast, and you'll also enter your 3 recommenders. You're going to put the recommender's name as well as their email addresses. And then Nursing Cast reaches out to those 3 references and informs them of the process for them to complete your letter. And you will give an internal deadline for those recommenders. So, if you're going to be applying for the UCAN program, I would not tell your recommenders that June 15th is the deadline. I would say, back that up, maybe to May 15th, just so you have some buffer in case somebody is late with a letter, and maybe you can punt and get a different letter, or you just kind of gently remind that professional that you do need that letter to be submitted. And I wanted to back up a moment, and I talked about the verification process that Nursing Cast does. So that's what takes, they say, apply 4 to 6 weeks before the deadline. And that mainly is because you'll have all your transcripts sent. And then one of the laborious tasks in Nursing Cast is to enter all of your coursework. And this is not just prerequisites, this is everything you've ever taken, post-secondary, post-high school. If you did any dual enrollment, though, in high school, maybe you did CU Succeed or you did concurrent enrollment with a community college, those credits are part of your record. So while we don't need high school grades, we do need any college credit transcript that you've ever received, coursework or grades for. So make sure that you don't forget anything that you may have done when you're in high school. Even if it was more than 10 years old, it's still part of your academic record. We need to see everything. So what Nursing Cast does when your application is complete, meaning you've submitted it, you've had all your transcripts sent, they've been posted, you've entered all your coursework, they verify that all the courses that you've entered in terms of the grades, the subjects, match identically to your transcripts. They will not do anything further until they can confirm that all the transcripts are there. Okay, and then they go line by line to determine if you've entered all the correct grades, you haven't forgotten any classes, you've entered everything and it matches correctly to your transcripts. So I always recommend that students have a copy of every transcript for schools they've attended with them at home, because otherwise you're not going to be able to successfully complete that part of the application, which requires you to enter all of your coursework. There is a service in Nursing Cast that they've started with in the last year, which is a service that they will enter your coursework for you for a fee. And the fee is based on how many transcripts you have. And I would just caution students, if you submit early enough and your transcripts are there early, it may work out fine, but I know there's a handful of students that I worked with in the last year that didn't get their transcripts in super early, and then they asked for the service for Nursing Cast to complete that process, and it took 5 to 10 more business days, and then they were really running the risk of not being eligible for review. So if it was me, I would just do my own entry for coursework, and then I control that, and I know, it shouldn't take a student 10 days to do this on your own. If you're paying for the Nursing Cast service, I understand, because they've got tons of students that they're working with. But I would just encourage you to do the coursework entry yourself and make sure it's done, and you can control that. The letters of reference are out of your control, you know, and, you know, really so is the timeline to get your transcripts there. So whatever I could control in an application, I would do. That's just my suggestion, knowing what students have gone through during application processes. The next thing on this list is interview day. We do have interview days for both our traditional and accelerated pathways. And in thinking about the timeline, for the traditional pathway, we did our interview day in January of this year, and then we admitted in mid-February. And then for the UCAN program, we have identified a date. I think it's, oh, don't quote me on this. I want to say it's maybe July 19th. It is on NursingCast right now if you're going to be applying. So as of March 1st, you'll see the date. But it's typically somewhere in the third week of July. And then we do our best to get decisions out by September 1st. And again, that is for a January start. Both programs also require orientation, and those dates will be communicated to you, you know, closer to the start of a program, but just know there is an expectation that that orientation is also required. And interview days are required. So if you live out of state or out of the area, I would mark those interview days for whatever application cycle you're applying for. I would put that day on your calendar just as a heads up. For instance, for UCAN, we'll close the application June 15th. Our goal is to let students know by July 1 where they stand, whether or not they've advanced to the interview day or not. But just know that there is a requirement for you to be physically present on the Anschutz Medical Campus for either of our interview days. And again, we do one day for traditional and one day for UCAN. We always suggest checking our website frequently for updates. You never know what could pop up, and that's true for any nursing school you're looking at. Just make sure you're staying on top of any potential changes. And one last thing I want to note before we take some more questions is that the primary and supplemental application fees in NursingCast, this has been a source of confusion for some applicants in the past. And I want to point out that there are two separate fees that you need to pay for either application. So the primary fee of $50 is paid directly to NursingCast, and that is when you submit your application. Okay, we, meaning the University of Colorado College of Nursing, also require another, what we call a supplemental application fee of $50. So when you add those two fees together, it is a total of $100. So we've had some cases in the past where students didn't read the details of the application carefully. There is a link for you to go out and pay the supplemental fee that links you outside of NursingCast, because it's not a NursingCast fee, it is a CU fee. But again, you don't want not paying the supplemental application fee to keep your application from getting reviewed. Okay, so just remember, there's two fees of $50 throughout this process. So I think we're going to go to the questions. I'm going to try to field the questions first that are more of an admissions focus, and then I will turn it back over to Dr. Gordon so that she can look at the more programmatic questions. Okay, so I think the next question was, for the CUME GPA, if you retake a course, will the initial grade count? So yes, the cumulative GPA is all previous course attempts. We do not delete any courses. Okay, so again, if your school has a repeat delete policy, or if you've just taken a course multiple times, every course attempt is in that CUME GPA. The difference is for the prerequisite GPA. For that GPA, we look at the highest course attempts at the time you apply. So essentially what courses are on your transcripts when you apply is what we'll look at. So let's say you got a C in human anatomy, and then you retook it and got an A, and that A was on your transcript when you applied. We'll look at the A for the prerequisite GPA. But just know that C is still on that overall cumulative GPA, if that makes sense. Also note that the minimum acceptable grade is a C for prerequisites. A C minus will not work. So if we see a C minus and that's the only grade you have for a prerequisite, then it will not meet a requirement for our program. Okay, so the next question is, are non-regionally accredited schools common? Now I'm worried. I think back to when I was an undergraduate, which was quite a few years ago, and I really didn't even think about accreditation. And when I started working in higher ed, I became acutely aware of how important that is. And if you think about accreditation, you should be able to Google, if you pull up the name of your school and just say accreditation, you should see pretty quickly what the accreditation is. Pretty much, major universities, colleges, community colleges typically have regional accreditation. The schools that you need to be particularly concerned about are career colleges, some technical programs. You know, I hate to have to harp on the importance of regional accreditation, but it is important because there are definitely times where I've met with students and they've taken courses and they just will not be transferable. And those are heartbreaking conversations because the students have worked really hard to maybe earn a certificate or to get where they are today in terms of maybe working in healthcare, and then they realize that they're going to have to start over, and those are difficult conversations. So I would just encourage students to be really good consumers. If you are trying to find the accreditation and you just can't, reach out to me and I'd be happy to help navigate that for you. Okay. So in terms of UCAN, this is a good question. I don't think I mentioned this. The UCAN program is all at the Anschutz Medical Campus. The only program that we offer down in South Denver, again, paired with that wildlife experience, is a traditional pathway. And in UCAN, we have 96 spots. Not sure if I mentioned that. So for UCAN, we have 96 spots, and we tend to get about the same number of applicants. So we tend to get somewhere between 400 to 600 applicants for both programs, but there's only 96 spots available for the accelerated program. Okay, so the next question is about withdrawals. And, if this is a question we get from time to time, a straight withdrawal on a transcript does not help or hurt a GPA, but it can be a blemish on a student's record. What we're most concerned about is if we see a pattern, and maybe you've had several semesters where you've taken on a lot and had to drop everything. I mean, it's not going to be good for you for financial aid reasons, but also, that might be a signal to us to say maybe this isn't the right time for a student to be in school, or maybe you take on too much. So, I wouldn't say that it would eliminate you if you've got withdrawals, but if it's something that you'd want to have a conversation with me or with Anna Penn, we can certainly look at transcripts. If you've got 1 or 2 W's in your college career, for our purposes, don't worry about it. The one thing that you do want to think about, though, is some schools have a grade where they call it a WF, and that means you were withdrawing, that you withdrew when you were failing. And a lot of times schools view that grade, they incorporate it as an F. So that would impact your GPA, and that would definitely be a red flag for us. If an F was on there, that's part of the GPA. But if it's a straight W and there's no grade associated with it, again, if you've just got 1 or 2, I wouldn't worry so much about that. Okay. There's a question about tuition. And this is a great question, especially we're on a webinar. There could be a lot of out-of-state students. And cost is something that we want you to be thinking about. I think too often we have students that focus solely on academics, and then they're able to get accepted, and then they find out their financial aid package and they gasp, because they figure, oh my gosh, how am I going to fill up this gap funding when my loans only cover so much and I don't have savings to cover? So to give you a sense of what the current rates are for tuition, for students that are, I'll do in-state first. So for students that are currently in-state or in-state when you're going to be coming into the program, and if you have attended high school in Colorado and get the College Opportunity Fund, which is just called COF for short, the current rate is $425 per credit. And I mentioned that both of our programs include a total of 66 semester credits. That $425 is just the base tuition cost, and that doesn't include student fees, lab fees, books, supplies, any other additional costs. It's just the base tuition cost. And if you're a Colorado resident but you might not get COF, which is, again, the COF is just a small discount, the tuition is closer to about $500 a credit. Just note that the tuition rates go up each year as well. So last year, students who got COF, the rate of tuition was $410. And again, this year it's $425, and it will go up again this coming fall. For out-of-state students, the current tuition rate is $900 a credit. Okay, so it's something that you want to be thinking carefully about in terms of, what kind of debt you're willing to take on. Do you have other sources of funding? Be looking at scholarships, be looking at resources. The fewer loans you can have, the better. I mean, definitely remember that this is a great investment for you in your future, and you can make a great great living as a nurse. But obviously, the less loans you can take, the better. And one thing I want to say, especially to those students who have a previous bachelor's already, the government gives more money to first degree seekers than they do second or third degree seekers. So while you still may be eligible for aid on a federal level, you want to do your FAFSA early every year. But if you have a previous degree and you're coming either to do the traditional pathway or the accelerated pathway, just note that you're probably going to be eligible for less aid the second time around. And you've got to try to figure out, okay, what can I do to fill that gap in funding? So, we just always want students to be very thoughtful about the cost. And, as I was just giving that answer, I wanted to just specify, I think there's also a myth that the traditional pathway is designed for students who don't have a previous degree. And yes, it is, but we certainly have tons of students that we admit that have previous degrees, and they've said, you know what, this is not the right time in my life to do an accelerated pathway. Maybe they've got a family, maybe they've got outside commitments, or maybe they just know themselves and know they need more time to absorb content. Or maybe it's purely a financial reason and they want 2 years to be able to pay for nursing school instead of 1. So, never think that just because you've got a previous degree, you have to go for UCAN. The same 5 prerequisites apply. So just keep an open mind about that. And again, it's the same number of total credits for either program. Okay, so the next question is, do you have to have a previous bachelor's to apply for UCAN? So the degree has to either be done or it has to be done prior to the start of the program. So just to reiterate that, the application is March 1 to June 15th. All the prerequisites for UCAN have to be done by that deadline. But let's say maybe you're finishing your degree that summer or fall. As long as it's done before you would start the program in early January, you would still qualify. If you know for sure you're not going to have a previous bachelor's, then the traditional pathway is what you need to look at. Okay? Okay, let's see here. Okay, what schools do I need to include in my application? So you need to include every post-secondary school you've ever attended, whether or not it includes prerequisites. Okay, and that also includes non-regionally accredited schools. So maybe you went to Pima Institute, for instance, to do some coursework. You would need to request a transcript from Pima. Okay, the reason we do that is because the regional accreditation is a tricky piece. We don't want students, having to determine what's regionally accredited and what's not. We want every school to be there to represent your academic history. And the nursing CAS assists us in determining which schools are regionally accredited, so we know which courses to look at that are relevant. If you neglect to include schools, your record will be flagged in nursing CAS and it will be turned back to you, which delays the process. So the next student asked about how much healthcare experience is required, and we don't say it has to be a minimum amount of time. We're certainly looking for good quality experience, and again, direct patient care is preferred. Again, there's not a specific number of hours. I would say the more good quality experience you have, the better. And just note that your level of healthcare experience is compared across the applicant pool. And, the applicant pool does really range in terms of healthcare to maybe, younger students who might have less than a year of experience to some that have 4 or 5 years of experience as a CNA. And this is a time in their life they've now able to come, maybe go back to school and actually pursue that bachelor's degree. So it's hard to say, we're looking for the good quality experiences, and you want to be very diligent in your documentation of that experience. Sometimes students can get great experience as a volunteer. It's just more difficult. If you think about the role of a volunteer, it's often not direct patient care unless you're in a really small facility where you have a lot of opportunity to advance your role. But in large hospitals, generally you're going to need to be a CNA or an MA or an EMT, kind of working along with a hospital to get that good patient care. And the next question kind of leads me into a thought I had. Can we apply to both the traditional and UCAN programs? The nice thing is that the application cycles do not overlap. So theoretically, you could apply for UCAN. It's going to open March 1. And let's say you don't make it to the interview. Okay, you could then turn around and apply for traditional. Okay, if you apply and are accepted to UCAN, again, you would know that around September 1st. And the traditional application will just open the end of August. I would say if you get accepted to UCAN, take your spot, unless you feel there's a real fundamental reason why the UCAN is not going to work for you. We do not just move a student from one program to another. If a situation came up, we could certainly look at it. But generally speaking, if you are accepted to UCAN, and you would decline that spot and apply for traditional, if you've changed your mind. We don't have a lot of students that would do that, I think. So be thinking about the program and what's going to be a better fit for you. But we definitely encourage reapplicants. We understand it's a very competitive process. The one thing I would encourage, though, is that if you submit an application and you're not successful, whether you're not successful from the start and don't make it to interview day, or maybe you make it to interview day and you're not successful, I would say, reach out to myself or Annapin, and we can try to give you some guidelines to say, maybe where you fell short as compared to students that we admitted. And maybe we can brainstorm to figure out what could you do to improve your application. What we really don't want to see is a student that applies, doesn't get it accepted, and then submits the same exact application in the next cycle. Because for us, what's different? We want you to be thoughtful in terms of that approach. And maybe it means you retake a course that you got a C in. Maybe your letters need to be stronger. Maybe your essays need to be stronger. It's just something to be thinking about. And we definitely are able to help give you some guidelines as to what could make you more competitive. So the next question, let's see. I understand that micro and stats had to be done the semester before the beginning of the program. So I think you might be referring to the traditional pathway. So I mentioned that there are strict guidelines as to what can be pending during the application process. And so if you think back to the timeline for the traditional pathway, we have our application late August into mid-November. So students still may have courses pending in the fall. And that, for us is okay, because the reality of our admission cycle is we will see fall grades before we make decisions in February. So those grades are going to be known to us. However, spring grades during a cycle, we take a risk with students. And so because of that reason, for the traditional pathway, we only allow up to 16 total credits, semester credits that is, to be pending in the final spring. And only one course science may be taken along with statistics. Okay, so stats and say micro could be the science, or it could be stats and maybe human physiology may be pending. But again, I would caution students against having courses pending in the spring. It's something we look at in the admissions process. So, if we're looking at two applicants and one applicant, they look pretty much identical, except one applicant has all the prerequisites done and one has 3 courses pending in the spring, it's likely we're going to admit the student that has everything done. So do we admit students that have courses pending in the spring? Sure, we definitely do. It's just, if you're looking to be the most competitive you can possibly be, I'd say have your courses done by the end of fall would be my suggestion. And again, keep in mind for UCAN, there's no pending courses. Every course has to be done by that application deadline. It's just traditional that we allow some courses to be pending during the application process. And the reality is, just one more thing about that, if you're admitted to the program, your admission is contingent upon you finishing successfully those final spring courses. So we've had a couple of cases over the past several years that a student maybe got a C- in a prerequisite, or had to drop a course because of health reasons or whatever, and we have to rescind admission in those cases because students have not met standards to be able to matriculate in the summer. Okay, so just keep in mind we do take a risk for students in terms of those spring courses for traditional pathway. Are admissions rolling? No. Although I strongly recommend that all students submit early, we make admission decisions at the same time. So we let every student know on the same day for both cohorts what the status is. So whether you move forward for interview or you're not moving forward, we let everybody know on the same day, just so there's not confusion about where your status lies. And then likewise, we make decisions on the same day, at the end of the cycle. So this past Friday, I sent all the denies, the wait list, and the admission all within an hour of each other, just so students get a sense of where they stand. Okay, so the next question is, If I don't have a previous bachelor's degree, but I have more than 8 years of medical experience, can I apply for UCAN? Nope, that previous degree is an absolute requirement. So in your case, for the student that has 8 years of experience, the traditional pathway is what you'll be looking at. Okay, the next question is, if we're taking a class that's in progress during the application, how do we submit our grades if it's not our final grade? This is a good question. And this is especially important for UCAN. So let's just say theoretically, you're finishing up your anatomy and physiology 2 through a community college in Colorado this spring, and you're applying for UCAN, and that's your only prerequisite left. Go ahead and submit your application early, and you'll send that transcript with that course in progress. And in the application, you'll also notice that when you put in all your coursework, you will also be able to put in progress / planned courses so that we can see what you're currently doing, even if we can't see a grade yet. But just note, for the UCAN program, as soon as that grade posts, you need to request another transcript be sent to NursingCast so we have that final grade prior to that deadline of June 15th, if that makes sense. So don't wait to apply for the UCAN program until your grades are posted. Let's say maybe they're done in early May. Don't wait until then, because it's likely going to be too late for NursingCast to verify your records. Go ahead and have them verify it with that course in progress. And then the only final step you'll have to do is just make sure that transcript is sent to NursingCast as soon as the grade posts for that spring semester. NursingCast does accept electronic transcripts through Parchment and also Credential Solutions. As long as your school partners with one of those agencies, and NursingCast has to be, I think they have, I can't remember the word that they call it. They have to, you can't just have a NursingCast email sent through Parchment. They have to be a partner in the system. So the transcripts are sent from the database of your school through Parchment to NursingCast. Information is on the NursingCast website about that. If your schools don't use Parchment or Credential Solutions, or the electronic transcript is not an option, the transcripts have to be sent by postal mail. And again, that takes time. So again, that's another reason to be very timely in your application processing. So do you have to write a personal statement as part of NursingCast? I don't know if I mentioned that we do have 3 writing prompts that we give to students as part of the application, and that comprises your personal statement. So we don't have just a general personal statement that's part of our application. The writing prompts are currently on our website under admissions requirements for either the traditional or the accelerated pathway. So you can actually look at those prompts. And one thing that I do want to mention that we've recently added, and it will launch with our UCAN application next week, is that we've also added an optional document that students can include that talks about any mitigating factors, or maybe, in other words, factors that may make you less competitive on paper. So let's say you had a really tough semester when you were first in college for whatever reason. If you feel comfortable writing about that and kind of expressing what's happened to you, again, for circumstances that may make you less competitive, we would encourage you to include that statement as part of a document in NursingCast. Again, your personal statement will be the essay prompts that we ask for, but again, we're also now going to be allowing for both our UCAN and traditional application processes that document through which you could explain extenuating circumstances. For the letters of reference, does one of them have to be an academic reference? We recommend an academic reference for the UCAN program and the traditional pathway. However, we also understand that maybe a student's been out of school for a year or a year and a half, and maybe they don't no longer have connections with those faculty. In that case, we would prefer to see 3 professional references of a different sort. So maybe somebody that you've worked with, somebody as a volunteer, maybe in a healthcare setting, maybe it's somebody in your community that can speak to your character, maybe a pastor, for instance. The one thing that you want to be thinking about the most with the letters is, what is the message in those letters? And our ideal letter of reference tells us something about an applicant that we cannot see in the rest of the application materials. Thinking about the soft skills, thinking about your references speaking to your abilities in terms of communication skills, critical thinking skills. Think of some of the qualities that Dr. Gordon mentioned in her part of the presentation that we're looking for in applicants. So, critical thinking, your communication, your motivation for learning, what do you like around your peers? Those kinds of things we can't get in the rest of the application. And for you to be able to ask folks to write letters on your behalf, you need to know them pretty well. So, I would give references time, at least 4 to 6 weeks as a courtesy to allow them that timeline to write the letter for you. Talk with them now and prep them to say, this is when I'm going to be applying. Will you be able to write a letter for me? Can we sit down and talk about my resume? Can we talk about my motivations? Can we just have a one-on-one so that they have a better sense of where you're coming from? That will help them, better write a letter on your behalf. But we've gone through, probably 1,000 letters for the last application cycle for the traditional pathway. And there you can tell pretty quickly, a person that knows a student and doesn't. And, we'll have your transcripts. So don't have a faculty member reiterate your grade. We know it. We want more than that. Okay. So just, be very thoughtful in your approach for the letters. So I think the next question is kind of similar. The 3 references must be professional. Don't ask a peer to write a letter. We want something of a professional nature. Okay, and I think I just covered those letters of reference, what we're expecting. And the way that the references are set up is that the recommender will kind of check off boxes in terms of your qualities, and then we also expect a narrative letter to be submitted as part of that application process. And again, Nursing CAS provides all the instructions to the recommenders in terms of how to get that process done. Okay, so the next question was about, does the 10-year expiration apply to all 60 credits taken? So so I'm assuming you mean the traditional pathway, which requires 60 credits. So the bulk of those 60 credits are going to be prerequisites. And yes, those courses have to be done within 10 years. If you think about 60 credits, and there are 16 specified prerequisites that are outlined on our website. In most cases, a student doesn't have 60 credits based on those 16 courses. And in that case, we need some additional academic electives to boost that number to get to 60. So we're willing to take academic electives more than 10 years old if you have them and they're of an academic nature. It cannot be physical educational courses, technical courses, pass-fail courses, anything like that. But the prerequisites definitely have to be done within 10 years. And one question that sometimes comes up regarding prereqs is, let's say maybe you took chemistry when you were a freshman or a first-year student in college. And maybe that course is now expired. But maybe, by the end of your college career, you took a higher level chemistry, say organic chemistry or biochem. We can take that higher level chemistry course if it's within the 10 years. Okay, so if you have specific questions about that, always feel free to reach out to me and I can answer questions just so you kind of know where you are and what to expect. Okay. Okay, so I think I've already answered this. So can you apply for UKIN if you're not accepted? Apply for traditional? Absolutely. We encourage reapplicants. Okay, so the next question is, assume transcripts should not be submitted if there are still classes that will be added through mid-May. So yes and no. Let's say if it's your first class that you're taking at a school, and maybe you're doing, again, let's say human physiology. If that's the first class you've ever taken at this institution, we don't need a transcript that just shows it pending. But if there's any other courses you've had that grades are complete, send that transcript right away. And again, include that course as it's pending when you submit it. And then again, just make sure you send that updated transcript as soon as that grade is possibly available. I hope that answers that question. So the next question is about interview and how many students do we typically bring in? So kind of a general rule of thumb for us is that we want to bring in about double the number of students we're going to admit. So typically for UCAN, I mentioned that we admit 96 students. We tend to bring in currently about 200 students for interview day. And for the traditional pathway, we bring in somewhere around 275. Again, which is a little bit more than double for both cases. That's all I was going to say about that. Okay, are there a separate secondary application question? So there's no secondary application questions. The only secondary or supplementary requirement we have is that supplemental fee that I talked about earlier. Okay, so how do you calculate a W in GPA? So as long as it's a straight withdrawal, unless your school is using a model that there's a W and then a grade associated with it, like a WF, the W is not calculated in the GPA. So it doesn't help or hurt you. Okay, I'm going to let Dr. Gordon handle that next question about the success rate of the program. And I'm actually going to let her answer the next question as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gordon.
All right, super. So what is the success rate of the UCAM program? Are the amount of students admitted the amount that graduate? So if we admit 96, we expect to graduate 96. We've had a situation or two where individuals have had to decelerate for personal reasons. And so we bring them back the following year to the program. So we're not going to penalize any student if they have life happen, whether that means they injure themselves or they need to slow down because they weren't successful in a course. We bring them back, and our goal is to bring in 96 and graduate 96. So yeah, that's where we're at with that. We don't have a philosophy of having the students come into the program and then say, look to your left, look to your right. You will not be with these classmates when you graduate. We say, look to the left, look to the right. Those are your classmates that will be with you when you graduate. Another question is from Elizabeth, wanting to know, is this program a good entry into eventually becoming a psych mental health nurse practitioner? Yes, any nursing program is a great entry for becoming a psych mental health nurse practitioner. And while that's in our graduate program, we have one of the best psych mental health nurse practitioner faculty in the country, if not in the world, and our program is reflective of that. Time frame for completing your advanced practice registered nurse program varies depending on if you're full-time or part-time. So that can take 3 years to 5 years, just depending on your plan of study. Oh, hang on. So Amy Sturrock, your screen is up right now, and I've lost the chat. Let me pull back the chat, and I've gotten it to me now. So let's see. As a state school, do you have preference for Colorado state residents? We do not. We look at all applicants equally. What is the application enrollment for the dual enrollment ADN to BSN? You can reach out to me with that question specifically, but for our dual enrollment, we require that you have already been admitted to your associate degree of nursing program, and we then create a plan of study related to what school you're at and what your anticipated courses are. Is the UCAM program offered every year? Yes, it is. Every spring we have our class starting January 2nd. Is CU developing a direct entry master's program for folks with a non-nursing bachelor's degree? No, we only have our UCAM program. That's the 50-week program for students with a non-nursing bachelor's degree. If you start in the UCAM program and decide that you need more time to absorb the material, can you switch to the traditional pathway? If that needs to happen, that has to have approval of the dean on a case-by-case basis. We do not make that transition or that change a common pathway. I've only had one student decelerate with approval of the dean in the years that the UCAM program has been running. Amy, this is for you. Are studying abroad transcripts accepted? And the same thing, can in-state residency be established? I'll defer to Amy on those. And the application. Here's another question. If I apply for UCAN and get accepted and I decide I want to do traditional, is it possible to transfer in, or would I have to reapply for traditional? Again, I will let Amy answer that so I don't get it wrong.
So first, let me make sure can you hear me, Dr. Gordon?
I can hear you.
Okay, so I'm back online here. So thanks for your patience. So let me start with that study abroad transcripts. So I'm glad this came up. You know, one thing that we want to be thinking about with study abroad transcripts is how they are documented on a student's primary school transcript. So let's say you went to University of Denver, locally here. A lot of students do study abroad, and typically DU includes the name of the institution, the semester that the courses were taken, the semester schedule, as well as the grades. In that case, we don't need a transcript separate from that. Okay, the one thing that you would have to do in that case is when you're in the nursing CAS application, you would still need to include the name of that foreign school as a school attended. But nursing CAS will not need the transcript. Okay, and I will get back to the question at hand in a moment, but I just want to clarify. Let's just say that there's an instance where there is a study abroad that maybe you went through a consortium, or maybe the grades are listed as a pass-fail on your home domestic transcript. In that case, we definitely need the transcript. So that's something you can send directly to me or my colleague Anna Penn, but we need to see those grades and subjects that you took through the study abroad program. And to determine if we could count courses from study abroad, you know, that's kind of a two-step process. The first thing we have to do is actually get the transcript, okay, or look at the transcript on your domestic school in terms of, so we know the name of the school, okay, and then we have to vet that school with our Office of International Affairs to make sure that we can transfer courses in. So if they say yes, you know, it has a good reputation, we could accept courses from there. Then we look at the individual courses to determine we might need a course syllabus. So if you do study abroad, I would encourage you to keep syllabi for all the courses. You never know when you're going to need them, and that's true, pretty much true for any academic program that you participate in, but especially for study abroad, because we will likely need to see a syllabus. So, you know, we've definitely had cases where we've been able to transfer in the courses, but it takes a little bit more time. So I would just say be really proactive in that regard. Okay, so can in-state residency be established after the application? So that's a really great question. So when students apply through nursing CAS, they do not do the residency form at that point. What happens is once we have our admitted class, that's one of the first forms students complete. So again, we just admitted the traditional pathway last week. One of the first steps we've asked them to do is do the tuition classification form, along with an intent to enroll form, so that we know if they're taking the spot. And that tuition classification determines if you have in-state residency or not. And the good thing is, let's say maybe you're considered an out-of-state student for the start of a program. Before every subsequent semester, there is a petitionable period. So let's say maybe you didn't meet it for the first semester of UCAN. But then during that spring semester, your status changed, you know, based on you being here a certain amount of time or whatever the circumstances are. Then before the summer semester, there is a certain window of time that you can petition through the registrar's office to have a status change. So that is possible. You're not locked into one status from start to finish. Okay, so can I discuss the application essay and general advice you may have? Because I'm often looking at the essays, I can't really give specific information, but my best piece of advice to you is respond to the prompts provided. You know, one of the really important things in nursing, really in any health field, is being very detail oriented. And so for us, you know, one of the first tests is, are you doing the application correctly? And part of that means, are you answering the 3 prompts that we've asked you to respond to? Sometimes we have students that just go completely rogue, and they don't even, you know, we have the 3 prompts on our application very clearly noted, and they just don't even address them. And that's kind of a red flag for us, that we want to make sure students are understanding, you know, following the directions in the application. That essay is an important part of it. And again, the prompts are on our website. So I would say start working on your responses now, so that, you know, you have a sense of how you'll answer them. And you upload a document as part of the nursing CAS application. It'll be, you know, a PDF that you'll upload. So you can be working on those, you know, before the application even opens. Okay. So I think, Dr. Gordon, I think you answered the question if you wanted to switch or transfer in.
Yes.
Okay. So if you have additional questions, how can we reach you? I think you can see my screen right now. My email address is there, amy.sturrock@ucdenver.edu. And I primarily work with traditional pathway students, but my colleague, Anna Thielen, whose email is also there, works primarily with the UCAN students. But know that either of us are cross-trained, and we're happy to help. We are frequently completing transcript evaluations for students and course evaluations. That's something we're able and willing to do. Just typically give us a few weeks to get back to you because we do get a high volume of emails in our office. But yeah, please feel free to reach out to either of us. Dr. Gordon, I think I'm going to let you handle the next question if you haven't answered that one yet.
Hang on, I'm scrolling through the questions. So I
I know
think
there's
it
a
was
lot of them. It's
about
about home
healthcare
health care.
experience and home health care. That is a great place to get home experience because you have to be really on your feet with that environment. So home health care is healthcare experience.
Okay. Wait, there's a lot of questions. We just got to keep going here. So,
Yeah,
and
we'll
Dr.
tag
Gordon,
team.
and Dr. Gordon, if you need to go, I understand. I know you're super busy, but we'll keep going. I'll stay as long as I need to and answer the questions that I can. So, do you have UCAN students that have families with young children? I'm not as familiar with the current cohort. I don't know if Dr. Gordon can speak to that. I can definitely say in the past, we've definitely have had parents with young kids. And Dr. Gordon can chime into this as well. But I would say the students that have been successful, really in the traditional or the UCAN pathway that have had families with kids of any age, is that they've got plans A, B, C, D ready to go. They've got a great support network, meaning maybe extended family, very close family, friends, whatever that network looks like. That social structure is super important for students. And I don't know if Dr. Gordon wants to comment on that too.
Yeah, and I would echo that. I mean, if you have an infant that's 6 weeks old, are you physically going to be ready to provide patient
Mm-hmm.
care starting with the UCAM program in week one to other patients? And that's something that you really have to look into for yourself. But then again, it goes back to your support network. Do you have a partner that's really committed to you being successful in this program and that will get up with the small children in the middle of the night because you have to be ready for a 12-hour clinical experience that next morning? So I think that's a conversation that's critical to have with your family and your partner.
Mm-hmm. Great point. So the next question from Kendra was about the UCAN timeline for prerequisites. So just to reiterate, the application opens March 1 and closes June 15th. So you could have a course pending in spring as long as we're going to see that final grade prior to the deadline of June 15th. So again, the pending course, could be going on when you apply in March, but then go ahead and submit your application, put that course as an in-progress course for spring, but then again, have that final transcript sent to Nursing Cast as soon as you can once the grade is done, because it has to be posted to your records prior to June 15th. Okay, so you cannot take a course in the summer or fall of this year and still apply for this next UCAN cycle. We're very strict in terms of the prerequisites being done by that June 15th deadline. The next question is about math. So does calc count as statistics? It does not. Stats is a separate requirement for our program. We do take introductory statistics. We'll take a social science stat. So if you took like psychology statistics, we'll even take business statistics, because the reality is stats is based on application of principles, but calculus will not work for statistics. So no, sorry on that one. Okay, so I think I might have covered this about the interview,
I
but
think you did.
I think I did. So we generally bring in for interview double the students who we're going to admit. So 96 we admit for UCAN, and about 130 we admit for traditional. So do we look at grades from technical schools is the next question. If the school is regionally accredited, the courses would be included. So for instance, Colorado Technical University is regionally accredited. We would include those grades. If it was from Pickens Tech, for instance, we don't include those grades because it's not regionally accredited. So again, it's based on the school. Okay, biostatistics, would that be approved as a stats course? Yes, I've definitely seen biostats approved in the past as well. Okay, can we contact you for specific course numbers? Absolutely, yes. Send me the information. Ideally, send me the school where you're going to be taking the course and a link to the course description. That's ideal. In some cases, we might need to look for a syllabus, for times where a student may be taking a course and the title is not quite what we're looking for. Oftentimes, we'll say we need a syllabus that will be reviewed by faculty to make sure that you're meeting content expectations. But yes, please send those my way. Okay, next question. Okay, so if we have courses completed but are thinking about redoing a few to strengthen the application, could those still be pending? One thing to think about is we're going to look at the grades at the time of application. So if you submit an application, and again, let's say maybe you have a C grade for human anatomy, but you're retaking the course this spring and you're going to be applying for UCAN. We'll use the C grade until we have something to replace it. Okay, so if the grade has not been replaced prior to the deadline of June 15th, we'll use the C in that mix, if that makes sense. So you might meet the minimum guidelines to apply, with having the 5 courses, and if you have a C, the C is what we'll use. It may not be competitive enough, but that's something we have to see throughout the application cycle. I'm going to let Dr. Gordon handle the next question.
So could you please describe or estimate the number of hours required each week to succeed in the UCAN versus the traditional program, including hours in class, hours in clinical rotation, and hours needed for studying? So that will vary. I'm just looking at February right now. So I have, this week in February, our students have 21 hours of face-to-face class time, plus their clinical education center hours, their session, and those would be a 4-hour session. And then for some of the other courses, they might have classroom meeting time of 16 hours a week, plus then 24 hours of clinical experience. And it will vary with the courses that you're taking. So, you're doing 66 credits in 50 weeks. So you need to be able to figure out, how do I study? How do I learn? How do I balance life? And how do I go forward with that if I have to stay employed to pay my mortgage and to pay my bills? I would suggest looking at the traditional classes, because they're having, after our first week of the program, they're having maybe 8 hours a week of class that's face-to-face and maybe 24 hours of clinical experience during the weeks throughout the semester. They will not have 24 hours of clinical experience every week throughout the semester, though.
Okay, I'll go on to the next question. I think Dr. Gordon might have covered this, but we don't have really any kind of preference between Colorado residents or out-of-state residents. We're looking for the best applicants for our program. So, if 2 students are great applicants, hopefully we can admit both of you. We don't have a preference for in-state over out-of-state. Okay, the next question, if your previous school does not use nursing cast but transcripts have been sent to UC Denver, can that substitute? No, everything has to go through nursing cast. We can't have some transcripts sent here to our office and some in nursing cast. That's way too complicated. Every student, the expectation is all your official transcripts go into your nursing cast application. The next question was about Colorado residency and marrying a Colorado resident. I would strongly encourage you to look at the page on the CU Anschutz website that outlines establishing Colorado residency. That should answer your question. Okay, so I didn't see the UCAN option on nursing cast. That's correct. It will not launch until March 1st. So while you'll see other potential programs from all across the country on nursing cast at the moment, you will not see the UCAN program until March 1, and you will not see the traditional pathway until, I believe, August 21st. It'll be sometime in late August.
I'll take the next question.
Okay.
Is the traditional program a continuous 24-month program, or is it done in a typical semester format? So we start classes in the summer and we run year-round. So the only caveat to that is students at our South location do not have classes that are second summer at all. So we start in the summer, so you have summer semester 1, you have fall semester 1, spring semester 1, and then you come into the next summer semester 2, fall semester 2, and spring semester 2, and you'll graduate after that. However, if you are at the South location, you will not have any classes during the second summer.
Okay, I'll go on to the next question about the essay prompts. And the question is, are the essays intended to kind of meld together in a cohesive essay or separately? It's really up to the applicant. Sometimes students don't repeat the prompts in your essay because that wastes your space, because 500 words is not a lot of text. Some students will label them like A, B, C and answer each prompt. Some students are able to kind of use more of a narrative format that includes all three. And as long as we can clearly see that you're answering the three prompts, it's up to you how you approach that task. And I think the last question we've got here, do you accept Witchy for the UCAN? So while there are a few of our graduate level programs that accept Witchy and WUI, not every graduate program, but there are specific programs. For any undergraduate program in the College of Nursing for traditional or the accelerated, we do not have Witchy or WUI policies in terms of discounted tuition. I think that's the end of the questions. I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us, and I hope that this has been a beneficial session for you. I thank Dr. Gordon for giving us her time as well. Like Dr. Gordon said, we will put this recording on our website, and if you have questions, feel free to reach out.